Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Pada Padme Tayo Sitva Pranamami Moho Moho. We're taking shelter at the feet of Holy Mother Sharada Devi, Universal Mother, and Ramakrishna, the teacher of the whole world. I salute them again and again. So normally we would wait for Jean, who had some question, but I'm not sure how good her internet connection is. So she writes this question to us, and it is in relation to something she read from Sri Sharada Devi and the Divine Play, written by or compiled by Swami Chetananda. So she refers to page 626. I'll bring up this page. If avatars do not forget their divinity while acting on the world stage, they will not be able to perform convincingly as human beings, he says. What do we mean by avatar? By avatar, we mean some entity, some divine entity, really, that descends. What kind of divine entity? A kind of cosmic balancing power or cosmic mind, by its will, descends whenever there is a decline of dharma. What do we mean by dharma? We can loosely define dharma in many different ways. Some people say religion. Some people say eternal law. But as I may have pointed out before, the word dharma is from a root, the thing that binds or holds things together in a kind of structure where there is integrity and harmony. And so we can easily see how religion can do this. But sometimes we see religion that is pulling things apart, disuniting things. In which case, even religion, in its superficial aspect, or doctrinal aspect, or theological aspect, could be a dharma. So that you'll find when great incarnations come, it is when there is this difficulty within the religious structure, a kind of fight between the priests and the pundits and the mullahs and the mystics and the philosophers. The mystics and philosophers want to unite everything, but the priests, the mullahs, and the pundits want to separate everything. And so when these extremes are met, this cosmic balancing power comes and restores order for the next several thousands of years until another decline happens. Where do we get this idea from? We get this idea from the Srimad Bhagavad Gita for the first time, where Krishna tells us that from age to age, he comes. That is, this cosmic balancing power comes whenever there's a decline of dharma. So avatar means the thing that comes down to us. And so its intrinsic nature is divinity pushed and expressed by divine will. Then it goes on, like everyone else, Holy Mother ate, slept, walked, worked, talked, laughed, cried, suffered from disease and grief, and passed through worries and anxieties. So we may ask, how was she in any way special? Then it goes on to say, at the same time, she was unique. So she was special, not like any other mortal being. In what way was she really unique? She responded to worldly circumstances like ordinary people. But the moment she focused her mind on her true nature, she realized that she was acting on a stage and the world was not real. Now, there's a wonderful book by Reynold Johnson, a scientist from some time back, who had an interest in parapsychology. After investigating all the phenomena he could think of, in his final chapter, he says, he cannot make any sense of anything. No sense of a creation or the impossibility of it or the reason for it, why being should enter into becoming, except through the Hindu ideal of Leela, play. And so it is this concept of a play, a kind of dance, that is entered into by the cosmic mind, with this one difference. All individual entities that are playing their roles, that is a you and a me, are completely ignorant of our divine origin. Even though clues are there, we feel we are existent and we want to perpetuate our existence. But that we are immortal and divine is foreign to us. And the whole of the Vedanta philosophy and our missionary endeavor is, as Swami Vivekananda said, to expose to everybody their own inner divinity, their own inner immortality, so that they can manifest it from within. So all the roles that were played in the incarnation of this age, namely Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Vivekananda, and all the other offsprings and offshoots and companions of that, all the eternal companions that come with an incarnation, they come and make their impact. Now, those who are associated with these incarnations, in a way, are descendants of that. Just as when Jesus came, we see that for 350 years, there was no solid agreement about the theological aspect of Christianity. But even during that period of time, there were generations after generations of those who felt close to the original teachings of Jesus and managed to propagate this throughout the whole world. So when we examine this question of Leela, there's a good chapter in that same book, 18th chapter, which is to do with Mahamaya. Mahamaya's Maya, it says. And so it goes on. What is Mahamaya's Maya? Starts off like that. According to Vedanta, it says, Brahman is existence, knowledge, bliss absolute, without name and form, free from the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. This requires some explanation. What we call then this Maya or Leela, these are interchangeable terms. According to the Sankhya understanding of things, this Prakriti, this nature itself, is comprising three evolutionary forces. So that when we want to investigate what is reality, something is in the way, it is projected. This is the projecting or shristi, the projecting portion of this Maya. We have to understand that the term Maya is an original term that comes from something like to measure. And it often is used for some kind of elusive condition or magic. Something that is projected manages to obscure what is reality behind it. So some other thing has to be there, a hiding aspect. And fortunately, also a revealing aspect. Philosophically, this Maya is elucidated in analogies. Three analogies, key analogies would be there. The most popular would be that of a snake that is seen in the twilight of our day. Going out into the garden in the twilight when things are not exactly visually clear, we see something coiled up in a corner. Immediately, we project something onto it. We assume that it is a snake. And then we have fear coming in because snakes can bite, they can inject poison into us. And so it creates a fearful reaction in us. If we continue with life, laboring under this kind of illusion or delusion, then life becomes a difficulty, it becomes a struggle for us. But in the clear light of day, or with the aid of a lamp, with the aid of illumined intellect, we're able to reveal it for what it is. And we see there it is a rope coiled up. Now bear in mind what appeared was not something like a bus or a tree. It was exactly like what was there. And that means then, when we investigate this so-called nature, it must have signatures. It must in some way resemble the original entity. What is the original entity? It is existence itself. It doesn't go. It is consciousness itself. That is why we have sentiency and intelligence in the world. And it is also bliss or infinity, according to Taittiriya Upanishad. They say Ananta. So this existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute, without name and form, free from these three things. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas means the capacity to reveal something, the capacity to project something, the capacity to hide something. It is the unchanging reality beyond space, time, and causation. Everything that we know of is within that scaffolding, that framework, that structure, space and time and causation. Without these three things, there's nothing. The infinite Brahman, that is that supreme principle, equivalent to the rope which is lying there, becomes manifest as the finite universe and individual beings through its inscrutable power of Maya. If we want to find out how does this all work, we are wasting our time. It is inscrutable. One thing we know is that on the revelation, all this goes away. The whole projection goes away, the snake goes away, the fear goes away with it, everything else goes away, and only that reality exists. So this reality, when it is associated with this limiting adjunct called Maya, combination of these three things, this is called God or Ishvara. If we want a definition of God, therefore, it is the absolute associated with the inscrutable power of a mistake. And we buy into the mistake. Then what is our way out? Knowledge is our way out. And so in reality, this Brahman is associated with this Maya or Mahamaya, this great Maya that is put in feminine terms as a divine mother. This is our divine mother. It is exactly the same as Brahman, but in a different kind of condition. It is seemingly conditioned. It is appearing in a different way. Like fire and its power to burn, is this entity plus this projecting power to keep us under her spell. And really, for that reason, it is only by her grace that we are released. So it is Mahamaya who creates, who preserves, and destroys. It is the Shakti aspect of this. Now, when we look at the holy trio, comprising Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Swami Vivekananda, we are really seeing this trinity of creation, preservation, and dissolution. When we look at Brahma, Brahma has no power of its own. That is why only in Pushkar and maybe one other place in India, you will find a temple to Brahma. Otherwise, it is all to his Shakti, Saraswati. Because in the Vedic times, the first projection of this power was called Vak, or word. And then we can continue in a Christian vein. This word became flesh and dwelt amongst us. And the incarnation also became flesh and dwelt amongst us. And along with that, Ram came with Sita, the feminine aspect. Krishna came with Radha. And so it goes on. Ram Krishna comes with Sharada Devi. So she is the creating aspect. And then Ramakrishna himself is an incarnation. It is that preserving aspect that incarnates. This cosmic balancing power pervades everywhere. And so Ramakrishna, Vishnu. But then we have the destroyer through powerful words, powerful concepts, transforming actions. We find Swami Vivekananda as Shiva, the destroyer of our ignorance. So who is this Mahamaya? She releases a soul through her Vidya Maya. Two aspects being there, Avidya Maya and Vidya Maya. The Maya of knowledge, and binds souls to the world through Avidya Maya, the Maya of ignorance. When religion falls into decline and irreligion prevails, God becomes incarnate, controlling his own Maya to preserve the eternal religion. Now, the question that comes that Jean put forward was like this. I'll read it out. She says, did Holy Mother choose sometimes to live in the domain of Maya and sometimes in the realm of divinity? And we can get from some of these readings the actual answer to this question. Of course, the simple answer is yes, but then to what extent? Because we have seen that she lived like any ordinary person. But when she understood, when she detached from that, she stood in her own pristine nature. And that was very clear to everybody who saw her. It's as if you're in a room, standing with one leg in one area, one leg in another, and you can withdraw the one at any moment in time at will. And what Ramakrishna did was that, and what Holy Mother also did was that. The incarnation would come, therefore, as the power itself, and ever cognizant of that power underneath it all. This is like playing a game, or rather playing a part on a stage. You have to immerse yourself in the part. You have to immerse yourself fully. You have to weep. You have to jump with joy. You have to celebrate. You have to feel physical pain. You have to feel psychological disappointment. All of these things you'll go through. Otherwise, what kind of part will you be playing? And it is registered that everything that the Holy Mother did was carefully done in order to teach. Husking rice, for example. Why are you doing this? She was asked. He says, because I need to set the example. Other people need to know how to work. So everything that she did, every movement that she made, every expression she had, was this revealing aspect potentially to us. How to get out of this mistake. And she herself is the projector of it. What a wonderful, wonderful power. Unseen, hidden nicely. So did Holy Mother choose sometimes to live in the domain of Maya and sometimes in the realm of divinity? The answer is yes. But when she chose to live in the domain of Maya, she was fully immersed in it. And when she decided to live, as it were, in the realm of divinity, she was fully immersed in it. There was no mistake about it. Then Jean also asks, please can we explain Nitya and Leela? So now we'll go to the passage which is there and explain how that looks. All right, so we'll go back to the text that we were originally reading. All right. So I'll repeat. Like everyone else, Holy Mother ate, slept, worked, walked, talked, laughed, cried, and suffered from disease and grief, and passed through worries and anxieties. At the same time, she was unique. She responded to worldly circumstances like ordinary people. But the moment she focused her mind on her true nature, she realized that she was acting on a stage. That's the point. And the world was not real. That realization doesn't come to humanity at large, to you and me. Human beings live full time in the domain of Maya. But the mother lived sometimes in the domain of Maya, sometimes in the realm of divinity. She could move from one realm to the other at will. That's the answer to the question. And Ramakrishna himself explains this phenomena. Everyone, he says, is under the spell of this world bewitching Maya. When God assumes a human body, he too comes under the spell. Rama wandered about weeping for Sita. Brahman weeps entangled in the snare of the five elements. But you must remember this: God, by his mere will, can liberate himself from this trap, from this snare. Ramakrishna succinctly describes the human aspect of God. So he says, the Nitya and the Leela are the two aspects of reality. And Nitya means eternal. Leela is clearly not eternal. I just made a small joke earlier on. If Leela is a play, you don't want it to go on eternally. You'll fall asleep or get bored. So the play has to have a lot of variety. Unfortunately, in this play of ours, a variety is split into two dimensions: pleasure and pain, joy and sorrow. And we don't want the sorrow. But what kind of drama is it if there is no tension, no suspense, no plot, no interest, nothing to catch you hanging on the edge of your seat? People pay a lot of money, it seems, to become frightened. People love to watch a film that is full of fingernail biting, tension and suspense, fear tingling sensations. There's something within us, some curious, some morbid entity that we are, that enjoys these kinds of things. So it is a bit like playing a part on the stage in a drama that has many, many varieties. I always think of the old Bollywood movies where you have to have singing, there has to be dancing, there has to be suspense, there has to be humor, there has to be a hero, a heroine, there has to be so many multiple components in all of this. And we look at life and we see the same thing. We can see it as a play of waves. This is called Leela, the play, and there's no other explanation as to why it should be here, as Reynold Johnson came to that conclusion. Now, in contrast to that, there is the Nitya, the thing that is not bound by space or time or causation, that which is eternally present, in summary. And there has to be this twofold, two sides of the coin, otherwise we make a mistake. If we say it is all Leela, we become blasé. We forget that there's something more serious, something that is more profound, something that is deeper. On the other hand, if we say it is all Nitya, then we dismiss the world completely and deny our own humanity. But look at this beautiful combination of Nitya and Leela. And the eternal is on the one side, the play is on the other side, but this Mahamaya is in control of both, engages in the play fully, in a self-forgetting moment, but always aware of the eternal aspect of it. So God plays in the world as man for the sake of his devotees in this incarnation, that specific version of this Nitya. And they can love God only if they see him in human form. Jean writes a question: can we only love God in a human form? Well, actually, human love echoes human love, but we can love many, many things. We can love the beauty of a flower. More importantly, we can see the flow and combination of the beauty of nature flowing in all different forms, but still they are forms. And forms have concepts. But look at the glorious thing that happens. Look at when a special divine play takes place. It gives us the opportunity to play along with the incarnation. And so, when an incarnation comes, those who know it, who recognize it only through divine grace, have that unique opportunity of sporting with the divine. of getting some concrete form. How does this divine walk? How do they look? What do they say? What is the example that should be given? This is why Swami Vivekananda, in his roaming days, took two books with him, Bhagavad Gita and The Imitation of Christ. Imitation of Christ he loved. And the reason for that is because if there is a Christ, we should uphold such an entity as an ideal and try to imitate everything, trying to catch the wiring that such a divine personality had, and try and stand where he stands and think as he thinks, or she, in this case, thinks, and try and emulate that as much as possible. Such a great example is what leaves the impression. It's not the teachings are invaluable, but more than that is the personality that leaves the mark. The personality of Krishna that leaves the mark. Personality of Rama that leaves the mark. Buddha, Jesus, Ramakrishna. That's what leaves the mark. That we should stand in the glorious sunshine of such personalities and be bathed with divine bliss and grace is one of the most privileged things that we can do. And so it is not impossible to love God without this, but it is in the human form that we most love God, because supposing we have no form whatsoever, very often you ask people, do you believe in God? And Ramakrishna himself asked the key question, do you believe in God with form or without form? Whatever somebody said, he's posed the validity of the opposite. I believe in God formless. All right, that's good. But don't forget, God also has form. We have to have this flexibility until we understand every form is God's form, that universality of understanding. But it's the special divine perfection that is the ideal, the perfect ideal. Now, these kinds of concepts are put by Swami Vivekananda in his series on Bhakti Yoga and give us the opportunity to employ all our emotions into the single entity of an ideal that we love the most. And these divine forms come in two categories, historical and non-historical. But if you have a living, breathing, historical entity, it is a great advantage. Let us, for example, consider there is no photograph of Buddha. There is no replication in art, apart from the imagination, of what Rama looked like. We have, of course, theological and mythical representations, meaning things. A blue skin, for example, will indicate infinity. We can imagine Shiva, and we can love that form a lot. We can imagine Ganesha, we can love that form a lot. So these are non-historical forms, and we can get some kind of understanding from that. And then there are historical forms. Now, the historical forms, if we have photographs of that, if there is a proximity in time to it, how blessed are we? You can imagine how the early Christians had that great advantage. But after 100, 200 years, it was all gone. And then imagination and art had to take its place. But those who sat, who drank, who ate, who lit a fire, who drank in the words of the Savior, what a privilege, what a grace they had, and how they must have been illumined from it and been participants in the beaming light that was a Buddha, a Christ, and certainly a Ramakrishna. And the same goes then with the other side of the coin, namely that of Holy Mother. In this aspect of brother, sister, father, mother, or child, in these human forms, we can easily relate to that path of love, the loving entity, and it is just for this love of the devotees that God contracts himself, as it were, into a human form and descends on earth to play his Leela. It is because through a human body one can hear his words. He sports through it. He tastes divine bliss through a human body. But through his other devotees, God manifests only a small part of himself. We see more fully the manifestation. Swami Parameshwarananda recalled, we have seen the mother's two aspects, human and divine. When she was in the ordinary human plane, she followed social rules and norms and experienced pain and suffering, grief and affliction like ordinary people. Her extraordinary divine aspect was hidden beneath an ordinary human appearance. But amidst the hustle bustle of her household, her mind always remained calm and focused upward. She was completely detached. When she remembered her true nature, she dwelt in a higher realm that was beyond the reach of ordinary human beings. Because Holy Mother was a world teacher, every one of her actions and words has deep significance. Wherever she lived, her all-inclusive love made that place and its people her own. She had a special love for her small, poor village, Jairambati. Once while she was leaving for Kolkata, her aunt said to her, Sharda, do come again. Of course I will come, replied the mother. She then took some dust from the mud floor and touched it to her forehead, quoting a Sanskrit verse, Janani, Janma, Janma Bhumicha, Salva, Salvadapi, Garishyachi. Mother and motherland are superior, even to heaven. So as mentioned earlier, her life in Kolkata was not as free, actually, as her life in Jairambati. In the city, she lived downstairs, or she lived upstairs, I should say, in Udbodhan house. Once a day, she went to have her bath in the Ganga, and she seldom went out for sightseeing or to visit any devotee's house. But she was always busy with worship and spiritual ministry. Those who could go to her village came to Kolkata residence for initiation and spiritual instruction. Those who could not go there. And so, as I mentioned before, one morning, Jairambati, Holy Mother, was helping to husk paddy, which she did almost every day. It was Swami Arupananda who asked her, Mother, why should you work so hard? My child, she said, to make my life a model, I have done so much more than is necessary. Now we get an insight, you see, into why, not just her play, but why, the motive behind the play, the usefulness of it, the facility of it, the function of it. And so her pure, perfect, and unselfish life is an ideal model for human beings. She leaves a mold for her children, and it's now up to us to cast our life in that same mold. Then that leads us then to a study of such things as her daily life. I just want to get back to where I am here in the video. I'm not sure where I am here. All right, never mind. I'm trying to manipulate here Zoom to see the images and so on. I can't easily do it. So, so those were the questions that was asked, and those are the answers given. And so with those small words, I will leave you. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.